Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Preserves and Premonitions by Bella Falls, narrated by Johanna Parker. Chapter 1. Mason shoved a full glass of gray sludge in front of my face. Wrinkling my nose and giving him some serious stink eye, I pushed the disgusting concoction away from me. "I've had enough of those to last me 2 lifetimes. No, 3, I exclaimed with a pout. The hotness level of my detective boyfriend dropped at least 1 point with his insistence. "Come on, Charlie. Stop being so stubborn. You know you need its help, so drink it all down, and then I'll treat you to a piece of pie." "Where? At the Harvest Moon Cafe? At Sweet Tooth's? Or at Sassy's new place?" I clarified, hoping the current town debate of who served the best pie would distract him. He raised an exasperated eyebrow at me. "Nice try, but you should remember that I'm a highly trained warden and have a keen ability to detect a pile of malarkey in seconds." Mason moved the glass in front of me again. "Now, as your grandmother is fond of saying, quit your dawdling and get to it." His attempt at a southern accent cracked my grumpy demeanor. "Fine, but I'm only doing this for the pie," I grumbled, snatching the drink from him. Holding my nose, I tipped the glass back and let the thick potion gloop into my mouth. Swallowing it down as fast as possible, I drained the contents until I couldn't take any more. Mason held out a napkin for me to wipe my mouth. "I would tell you that it wasn't as bad as all that, but I have no desire to get punched in the stomach, or shoulder, or wherever your irritated fist might land." An uncomfortable bubble burbled in my chest, and out of spite, I let out a very juicy burp. Covering my mouth, I giggled a little. "Excuse me." My patient boyfriend sighed and shook his head at me, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "I suppose that's better than a bruise." He took the glass from me and went to the sink to rinse it out. I smacked my lips and grimaced, needing something to take the edge off the awful taste in my mouth. Nana had started making me drink the sludge again after she had failed to find a way to break the spell that bound Dash and me together. Sure, we'd done it for a good cause, but looking back on the whole debacle, I constantly wondered whether or not the end results were worth it. My eyes flitted to Mason, who poured sweet tea into a different glass just for me. He tried so hard not to show his concern over the binding, but I knew it had to bother him. I mean, he just told me he loved me, and then I went and connected my soul to another guy. At least the sludge allowed me to block off sharing too much of myself with Dash. Nana had tweaked her concoction until we'd found the best combination that shut down the binding's effects as best we could. And maybe Dash's return to his home in the mountains also lessened the consequences of our hasty decision. His absence helped me reassure Mason that I was all his. "Here you go. Maybe this will sweeten your disposition." The detective placed the glass of sweet tea on the table in front of me. As I reached out for the new drink, a wave of nausea hit me, and I knocked the tea over as I flinched. Beads of sweat broke out over my brow, and I stifled a moan, not wanting to alarm him. "Sorry, I'll get a towel to clean that up," I gritted, trying to stand and failing. Mason held onto my arm. "Stay here, I'll take care of things." He left my side, and regret battled with the sickening vibes racking my body. Any designs I had for us to be able to completely ignore my current predicament today flew out the proverbial window. It was getting harder to hide the growing magnitude of my symptoms from fighting the binding. Something wet and cold pressed against my forehead, and I reached up to touch Mason's arm. "Thanks," I uttered, closing my eyes and breathing in deep to keep the nausea at bay. He moved the wet washcloth to the back of my neck. "You're more than welcome." His controlled tone helped me maintain a level of calmness I wouldn't have had by myself. There were so many things I should say to my kind boyfriend that I didn't know where to start. The humongous elephant that followed us around and hung out right on the edge of every conversation grew larger as each day passed, and I got a little worse than before. Fear of the consequences of what needed to be said kept me quiet. I blew out a long breath, relaxing as the sudden need to throw up passed. Mason took the seat next to me, the worry in his eyes blazing at me. His lips were pursed in frustration. I drew the washcloth from the back of my neck and busied myself folding and unfolding the damp fabric in my hand. "I guess there are some things we should talk about," I admitted in a low voice. A loud yawn interrupted me, and Beau entered the kitchen, scratching the few hairs on the top of his bald pate.
"Morning, y'all."
"It's after 2 in the afternoon," I corrected him. My vampire roommate shrugged.
"We vampires don't find it necessary to keep track of time. Day, night, doesn't make much difference to us. Oh my."
He broke off, staring at me.
"You look positively pale."
Mason failed to stifle a chuckle, and I shot him a heated glare. "Beauregard Pepperpot, where are your manners?" I scolded. "Thought you were supposed to be a gentleman."
"I am. If I were speaking my mind, then I would tell you that you actually look dreadful,"
he added with a slight sniff.
"I hope my amorous pursuits are not keeping you from getting your beauty sleep."
I wrinkled my nose. "What have I told you about bringing your dates back to the house?" The vampire rolled his eyes.
"I promise you that no hanky-panky occurs in my bedroom. Only some skilled wooing in the parlor."
My stomach rumbled, and I feared a different flavor of nausea would overtake me. "Let's get out of here," I mumbled to my boyfriend, who couldn't seem to find the ability to stop being amused. We made it all the way out to the front porch and into the sunlight. The creaking of one of the rocking chairs startled me, and I turned to find Fenwin sitting in my usual spot, with Peaches settled next to her, soaking in the sun's rays and the attention of our fairly new roommate. "Hey, Fen," I called out to her. The sprite shielded her eyes to glance at me. "You look a little green around the gills. Feeling sick again?" she asked.
"Again?"
Mason repeated, lifting an eyebrow at me. Pixie poop. I didn't need my most recent roommate to confirm some of my detective boyfriend's suspicions about my health. "Nothing that a little fresh air and maybe some of that promised pie wouldn't take care of." I forced a smile on my lips and hoped my fey roommate wouldn't give Mason anything else to worry about. "Okay, sounds good. But I'll be sure to make you a new sachet of dried lavender and chamomile flowers for you to keep under your pillow to help you feel better," she offered. Peaches lifted her head and meowed at me. Her little furry insistence broke through my defenses. In a few short steps, I closed the distance between us and scratched her little head between her ears. "I would appreciate that. Thanks, Fan." We said our goodbyes and walked out to Mason's car on the edge of the property. The longer the silence stretched between us, the heavier it became, and although I'd almost had the courage to talk to him with more openness, that familiar fear gripped my stomach and made me swallow all the words I almost said. Expecting his car to head down to Main Street, I got a little miffed when he turned onto the road to my grandmother's house. "Where are we headed?" I asked, acting as if I didn't already know.
"I promised you we'd get some pie. Never said where it would come from."
He slowed down and parked next to a few other vehicles I recognized. I crossed my arms as he turned off the engine. "This is an ambush, isn't it?" Mason reached across from the driver's side and undid my seatbelt buckle.
"Charli, I think you'd agree that we've all been more than patient with you, but things are getting way too serious, and it's time to face the fact that you can't ignore the problem away."
I crossed my arms and pouted. "I can't believe you would bring me here so that people can fuss at me." The corner of his mouth lifted up, and he took a gentle finger and ran it across my jutted lip.
"Not fuss. More like show you that you don't need to carry the burden all by yourself."
Glancing out the window, I debated how far I could make it if I made a run for it. But in our small, supernatural southern town, nothing was kept secret. Soon enough, I'd have the whole community on my tail. Before I could make a run for it, Nana stepped out onto the porch.
"If y'all are waiting for a formal invitation, you'll be out there till doomsday. Get your behinds in here already."
I closed my eyes and groaned. Mason took my hand in his.
"Feeling nauseous again?"
"No," I said. "I'm girding my annoyed loins for what's coming." With an unnecessary grunt, I opened the car door. "Let's go." My feet trudged up the porch steps. Nana held open the swinging screen door, her mouth twisted in an amused bow at my childish antics. She popped me on my behind, and I yelped as I hurried past her. Familiar voices conversed in the living room, and I followed the noise until I found a sea of friendly faces glancing up at me from their seated positions all around the room. "It's about time," Blythe blurted out, pointing a fork at me. I was starting to think we were going to have to come over to your place and kidnap you. Lee pouted.
I had my eye on the last of the chess pie if you didn't show up.
Allison Kate giggled and nudged her husband. Stop messing with her like that. She glanced at me and winked. There's plenty of chess pie left. Want me to get you a slice? I nodded, unsure of what to say to all of my friends. A part of me knew why my grandmother had gathered them here, but I dreaded having to confront my reality in such a big way. Mason placed his arm around my waist.
Nobody in here's gonna bite you, except maybe me.
He leaned in to nip at my neck. A chorus of ews rose in the room. Matt approached after coming out of the kitchen.
Keep your hanky in private. Nobody wants to see that, least of all me.
He stuck out his tongue as he sat down next to his wife. Right, because we got this little poop machine from the Cabbage Patch where magical fairies placed her, TJ teased as she bounced my drooling niece on her lap. Not because you like to get a little frisky after. I held up my hand to stop her, grimacing. Okay, I get the point. Nobody needed to hear what got my brother's engines revving. Ben got up from one of the dining room chairs that had been dragged in. He moved to sit on the edge of the couch next to his fiancée. Lily waved her fingers at me in greeting, the diamond on her ring finger sparkling in the light. Well, I think it's absolutely grand that y'all came over to keep my grandmother company today, I declared, taking the offered seat and plopping down in it. We'll have a little pie, and then we can all go about our lives, minding our own businesses. The first hints of pain bloomed inside me, and I clenched my teeth and hands in preparation for the wave of nausea to follow. Attempting to ignore the heat of everyone's attention, I concentrated on not giving away how much of a toll fighting it took on me. Mason rubbed my back as I blew out the breath I didn't even realize I'd been holding. Sure, let's all pretend we didn't just watch you in 9 kinds of torment, because that's what friends do, right? Blythe scoffed. She sapped the pie on her plate to keep me from seeing the hurt and concern in her eyes. I can handle it, I gritted, catching a trickle of sweat rolling down the side of my face with my fingers. Allison Kate brought a plate with a generous slice of chess pie over to me. Of course you can. You're tougher than any other girl I know. Hey! Both Blythe and Lily exclaimed at the same time. My married friend ignored them and continued. But it's not a weakness to rely on those who love you, to allow them to help you carry the burden. Allison Kate's lower lip trembled. I took the plate from her and handed it off to Mason. After taking her hand, I held it tight. I hear you, Alley Cat, but that's the thing. You guys can't really help. Nana's been looking for a solution ever since she got better. And if she hasn't found anything yet, then why worry the rest of you?
She ain't the only one who's been looking, Henry groused. I kinda like my job, so I've been digging around myself on how to get rid of that fool binding you did.
If she hadn't done it, there's no telling what kind of havoc that Crossroads demon woman would have wreaked on Honeysuckle Hollow, Lavender defended, her cheeks growing pinker by the second. If it weren't for her and Nick, then we all might not be sitting here eating pie. Lav, how can you still care about that demon? Lily aimed a heated glare at her cousin. Sure, he did the right thing in the end, but if he hadn't done that from the beginning, Charlie wouldn't be in trouble right now.
Oh, she'd be in trouble, Nana groused. Just a different flavor.
Lavender bent her head to hide the tears brimming in her eyes. Despite what had happened with Nick and Lorelei, she still cared for the former spa owner. I suspected she managed to stay in touch with him while he was serving a much shorter sentence for his part in the whole debacle, since he helped the World Organization of Wardens infiltrate his family's business. I would have gotten up to go give my friend a hug, but another wave of sickness crashed over me, and I did my best to bear it. Instead of the prickle of sweat and throbbing in my head that accompanied it, the aching lessened and went away quicker than it had in over a week. I breathed out a sigh of great relief and looked up at Mason standing beside me. That one wasn't nearly as bad. Instead of smiling, his mouth turned down into a slight frown.
That's because the one thing that I could do to help has finally arrived.
My brow furrowed as I tried to decipher his strange meaning, until my ears caught the hint of a distinct rumbling growing louder and louder as it got closer. I didn't have to look out the window to sense the close presence of the man who jumped into the deep end with me and into the pool of chaos that our decision had caused. My entire being recognized his presence now that he approached the house. I didn't know whether to be relieved or scared of what might happen next. Chapter 2. Nana let Dash into her house, and the wolf shifter shrugged out of his leather jacket and handed it to her as he entered the room with all of us waiting.
"Sorry I'm a little late,"
he uttered in a low, raspy voice.
"Pack business."
His eyes wandered over the entire room and settled on me. He tipped his head in a small greeting. For the first time in weeks, the uncomfortable tightness in my whole body relaxed. I closed my eyes and drug in a deep breath. My shoulders released the tension, and I realized just how much pain I'd gotten way too used to every minute of every day. Mason handed me the plate with chess pie on it.
"Thanks for coming. From the looks of it, I wish it could have been sooner."
Dash scowled at me.
"Let me guess. She's been trying to deal with things all on her own."
"She is sitting right here where you can talk to her directly." I pointed a finger at myself. "And like you're any different." Taking the fork in hand, I cut off a bite of pie and chewed on it to keep from saying anything more venomous.
"But I am different. Shifters are used to dealing with pain."
Dash accepted the glass of sweet tea from my grandmother, but didn't take a sip.
Pfft.
I swallowed the bite in my mouth without tasting any of its sweetness. "Yeah, shifters are so much tougher than witches."
"Pretty much."
The heads of my friends went back and forth as if they were viewing a tennis match. I flipped him the bird while debating whether or not to spellcast a hex at his hiney to see just how much pain he could take.
"This is not the effect I'd hoped his presence would have on you,"
Mason said, gripping my shoulder. Matt scrambled to his feet and held out his hands.
"Okay, that's enough, you two."
His voice thundered with the authority of a warden. I rose out of my chair. "Well, it wasn't my idea to call him here, was it?"
"Bertie, may I please get your help with something in the kitchen?"
Nana asked in a honeyed tone. "Now?" I huffed. She leveled me with one of her famous glares.
"I think so."
Just to avoid having to walk past Dash, I exited through the doorway into the darkened dining room. My bare feet pattered on the hardwood floor, and I entered into the heart of the house, preparing to take a tongue lashing. "It's not my fault," I blurted in immediate defense. Nana busied herself with fixing another pitcher of tea. Instead of berating me for my poor behavior, she remained quiet, which was so much worse. "I didn't need to come here to be attacked. I've got enough going on without having my friends come at me like that," I continued, wanting to elicit a response from my grandmother and get my punishment over with. Without an ounce of anger, Nana turned to face me.
"Now, do you really believe that any of us are here to attack you?"
she asked in a calm tone. I opened my mouth to sass back at her, but snapped it shut again. Defeated, I hung my head. "No, ma'am." Instead of saying anything else, she closed the distance between us and swept me into one of her close hugs. I melted against her and gave in to everything I'd been trying to avoid for so many weeks. Tears gushed out of me, and I sobbed onto her shoulder. Nana patted my back and rocked me back and forth.
There, Bertie. We'll fix it. You'll see,"
she crooned. Everything I'd been trying to keep in came pouring out all at once, and I snorted and snotted into her shirt until my breathing came in despaired huffs and sniffs. I pulled away, mortified at the marks I'd left behind on her. "I'm sorry." My grandmother chucked me under the chin.
"Don't you apologize for having a good cry. Does a body good, and I think you needed it."
Sniffling, I dashed a stray tear off of my cheek. "Yeah, I've been trying so hard to keep it together."
"No, what you've been trying to do is to ignore the effects of the binding because you don't want to hurt your detective."
Nana always knew how to cut to the heart of things, and it was foolish of me to try to pretend she wasn't right. I slumped against the nearby counter. And now I went and picked a fight with Dash after my amazingly, incredibly understanding boyfriend called him to come here just to make me feel better. Nana shook her head.
You picked a fight because you didn't want Mason to notice that Dash's presence gave you some relief, that the two of you being in close proximity stops the pain you've been dealing with.
I wiped my hands down my face. What do I do? In order to solve one problem, I'm creating another. My grandmother shoved the full pitcher of tea into my hands.
First thing you're going to do is refill everyone's drinks. Then the second thing you're going to do is to stop worrying about creating problems for everyone else and see how they might be able to help you.
She brushed a strand of hair behind my ear.
There's strength in leaning on others, not weakness.
I nodded once and followed her out of the kitchen and back into the living room. Stopping next to Dash, I bumped him once with my hip in a combined silent apology and thanks for coming. Making the rounds around the room, I did as Nana asked and refilled my friends' drinks. By the time I finished, I felt more normal than I had in weeks. Before sitting down, I pulled Mason into the dining room area by the hand. I can't believe you called Dash and convinced him to come here. He nipped the end of my nose with a quick kiss.
Haven't you figured out yet that I do pretty much anything for you? Besides, I told you before, my warden skills make me pretty observant. I could tell that the binding was bothering you. It makes sense that since you're magically tethered to him, that maybe you would feel better if he were in closer proximity.
Yeah, well, my brother's a warden too, I said, leaning into his comforting embrace. Mason's low chuckle reverberated into me.
And he's been just as concerned about you as I have. But we both gave you room to be grumpy.
I pushed back from him. I haven't been. Oh, even I can't believe that lie. Yeah, I have. I've been terrible to you and everyone else who just wants everything to go back to normal. Leaning on my tiptoes, I pressed my lips against his. After a slightly indecent amount of time, he released me and cleared his throat.
You're forgiven. Now, let's go back in there and see if we can come up with a solid plan of how to fix this.
Before we entered the crowded living room, my entire body was well aware of where Dash had settled himself in the corner nearest the quickest exit. I squeezed Mason's hand 3 times to ground myself. Henry grunted at something someone had said before we joined the conversation.
Ben and I have already been scouring through the books he had Horatio procure through interlibrary loan.
My advocate friend nodded.
As far as we've discovered through our research of history, bindings are pretty tricky spells to begin with.
But Mason and I kind of did the same thing once, and we were able to break our connection, I protested. I don't see why it's any different.
It just is, Nana huffed. What you two did was open yourselves up to share magic, which, I'll admit, is kind of the beginning foundations to an old-fashioned witch binding.
Great, so then there has to be a spell that will undo things, right? I asked, begging my grandmother with my eyes. Her mouth pursed.
Not that I've been able to find. And we're not just dealing with our magic alone. You've managed to combine witch, fae, and shifter magic all at once. Whatever you did, it's being dang blasted stubborn to the last.
The room quieted after my grandmother's rant. When the most powerful witch in town, heck, the entire eastern coast of our country, didn't have an answer or a solution, then things were about as bad as they could get.
What if we got lucky here and tried to break things like we did before? Dash offered. We've done that numerous times before you took off for the mountains again, Nana countered. By Lucky's estimations, it will take someone more active and further up the Fae royalty chain to counteract the power of his authority, and I take his warning seriously that the options of who we'd have to call upon might open our town up to some dangerous consequences.
So there's no hope? My voice came out smaller and frailer than I'd meant it to. Nana's irritated expression softened.
Oh, no, sweet bird. We Goodwin women never give up.
Neither do your friends, Blythe added. If you need us to scour the country, we'll do it. Just point us in the right direction. Murmurs of agreement rose in the room, and I linked my fingers tightly with Mason's.
I've made a few inquiries with past connections, the detective said.
I glanced up at him.
You better not make any deals under the table that require you to go away like you've done before. I won't have you putting your life in harm's way for this." He lifted my hand and brushed his lips against my knuckles. Irritation instead of delight rose in my chest, and I recognized the invasion of Dash's emotions, pushing against mine once again. Now that the shifter was here, his immediate presence seemed to negate the effectiveness of Nana's gloopy sludge. "I've contacted our friend Agent Jacinta on the down low," my grandmother said. "Down low? When did Nana learn that term?" I whispered loud enough for my friends to hear. She rolled her eyes at the chuckling that followed. "Anyways, she says she will do some digging of her own to see if she can help us find a solution. In the meantime, I've put out some feelers to find us a spell weaver." Everyone, including myself, gasped at her admission. We looked between ourselves as if to double-check that we'd heard her correctly. "What? Why is that so shocking?" Dash grunted. "A spell weaver is someone with very rare talents," Henry explained as he crossed his arms over his chest and leaned back in his seat. "They also like to keep themselves hidden and secret from the rest of the magical world." "Why?" the shifter pushed. "Because of the magnitude of their powers. While I can cast a spell weaver can see exactly how the magic works. All the threads of energy that tie the power together. Think of it like knitting." Nana spellcast an illusion of two needles with some yarn being knit together. "Now, the stronger the caster, the stronger the results. However, a spell weaver has the ability to undo everything." Still using the conjured image, my grandmother tugged on the non-existent thread and undid the imagined swatch of knitting. "Pull the thread, and the whole thing will come unraveled," she finished. My brain attempted to keep up with this new concept. "So, if we could find a spell weaver, who sounds like they'd be impossible to find, then maybe he or she could undo the binding?" Henry raised his hand. "Not to be the bucket of water on this fire of an idea, but beyond spell weavers being rare, even if you could find one, isn't it going to cost a pretty penny? If this is something that will help Charlie, then money won't be a problem," Dash growled. "No, it won't be," Mason replied, his tone a little firmer than normal. My shoulders tightened a little at the wave of dominance that rolled off of Dash and through me. "Let's worry about finances later and focus our efforts on finding a spell weaver. Henry, you and Ben keep being good research monkeys and see if you can find anything else that might be helpful." "Yeah, because we need you to be at your best in a year so you can be in our wedding party," Lily said, flashing a ring at me. "Actually, I'd prefer if she could fix the binding a little faster, like a good 6 months. Allison Kate's eyes twinkled at me as she rubbed her stomach. "What?" I exploded. "Are you preggers, Alley Cat?" All of the girls jumped out of their seats and surrounded our bubbly friend, squealing with glee. Lee pushed his glasses up his nose. "Hey, isn't anybody gonna fawn over me? I'm the daddy after all." I stopped rubbing Allison Kate's tummy long enough to glance at him over my shoulder. "If you want a high five, you better get them from the boys." He chuckled as Dash came up and clapped him on the back. "I'm just glad we can finally talk about it. It's been killing us to stay quiet." "But we didn't want to jinx things in the first few weeks. Doc Andrew assured us that everything is fine, and both me and the baby are healthy." Allison Kate blushed at her husband. "Woo-hoo!" I whooped. "We're going to have another Charlie, the third." Lee snorted. "First of all, what's with this we business? Unless you mean my wife and I. Second of all, my daughter and your niece's name is Raylene, not Charlie Jr., despite what you insist on calling her," my brother called out. "And if it's a third, it'll be Leland Chalmers the third, not Charlie," Lee finished with a nod. Allison Kate giggled at all of us. "It is going to be a little boy or girl, and I think Charlie is good for either. Maybe as a middle name if it's a boy." "Bertie, stop terrorizing them about names," Nana admonished as she pushed her way through the throng to hug my friend. "Congratulations, sweet girl." I appreciated ending the intervention on such a high, and to have the attention focused on something positive rather than the problem looming over my head
Well, mine and Dash's heads. I hugged everyone goodbye as they left, full of pie and hope. Nana excused herself to clean up the dishes in the kitchen and left Dash with Mason and me. The shifter's discomfort.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?